You know that moment where the blue circle is going round and round? Hi, hi. I was looking at the blue circle going round and thinking, oh gosh, I hope the Wi-Fi works. So welcome to Remember to Breathe. And my name is Lindsay Denham, and you'll hear from my accent that I am from Scotland, but I have been in Canada for the second time since 2014. So we came back in 2014 because my youngest, who was 15 at the time, had applied to go to Etobicoke School of the Arts, and we moved countries and came back. But my son, who is 28 now, he had already been in Toronto since he was 18, so we kind of just moved everybody back again because he was born in Vancouver in '92. So that's where my motherhood journey began, Vancouver, 1992, and I had no plans to become a mother, so you can only imagine where that left me. So I have a whole slew of papers around me, and I know my chat is to be around how the Bach flower remedies and mindfulness have helped me to raise my 3 children. And I want to say that in the first 9 years, so Andrew was around 9, Jennifer would be 7, and Alison was only 3. I had no coping mechanisms, no real help from anywhere, because I pretended to the world outside of our 4 walls that I was absolutely the best mother on the planet. But inside I felt like the worst mother on the planet. So not even my mother or my sister knew how I really felt. The only people who knew were my 3 children and my husband, and I really wasn't coping with life very well. And I'll give you a little bit of my history. I was a nurse for 26 years, registered nurse, and I had to, I was good at what I did. I really enjoyed nursing, but it was a stressful job. I was in neonatal intensive care, paediatric intensive care. I did that on both sides of the pond, so in Edinburgh and Vancouver, and in Toronto actually. But I really had detached myself from my positive emotions when I was younger. I was bullied at primary school, and I think that made a big impact when I went to high school, that I didn't want to be bullied at all, so I put myself over as the tough guy. And I was lucky that I came from a tough neighbourhood in Edinburgh, and I went to school in a posh neighbourhood, so they just kind of left me alone, which was great. But through my kind of young adult life, I kind of kept on that persona, and it wasn't who I was, so I spent a long time getting back to the wimp that I actually am. So that's me. So yeah, nursing. Everything was medicine, everything was a pill, everything was a surgery. I had no clue in my early adult life that I was responsible for my own physical health. And after the kids came, my health, mental health and physical health both began to suffer, because I had no emotional balance. I had no way of coping. So my physical body and my mental health really suffered. So by the time, as I say, Andrew was 9, Jen was 7, and I was 3, I was on my knees. I was on my 3rd round of antidepressants, and I had had several surgeries on my elbow, my knee, my neck, my final surgery was on my back, but there was another one in there, my wrist. So I had all these surgeries, and I had these dark, despairing moods, because I just never felt good enough. So when my lower back would play up, as it did frequently, and I was off work, I was left with sitting around having too much time to think about what a bad mother I was, and how hopeless I was, and the spiral just went on and on. So you're not here to listen to my life story really, but it's my stories that will be intertwined with how the Bach flower remedies, and you can see the posters on the door and the wardrobe behind me, how the Bach flower remedies saved my life. Actually, they did. It's not even an exaggeration. I was very close to the edge when I came to Bach flower remedies, because my 3rd round of antidepressants, which were given to me by not my own doctor, who prescribed a different antidepressant for me, knowing how I felt about antidepressants, he got round it by telling me that it was a muscle relaxant, but it also had this kind of antidepressant effect. So that's how he got me to take them twice. But it was a different doctor, and she prescribed Prozac, and it didn't agree with me at all. Within 2 weeks I was unable to work because I couldn't focus, and I went into work one night and said I have to go home because I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to give kids the wrong dose of drugs, and that's obviously not what we want. So I went home, and the next day I went to church, and it was a friend of mine who I had laughed at for years, seriously, laughed at her for years. Every time we would get together, she would have this little brown bottle with her, and it was her Bach flower remedies. So she had told me many times what they were for, and I had laughed at her many times because I wasn't ready to listen to something that simple being effective. You know, my medical background, my nursing background just didn't allow that kind of information to come in. But this Sunday morning, after the Saturday night having to come home, she asked me how I was, and I burst into tears, and neither of us went into church. We just sat, and she listened to my story and how awful I was feeling, and I call it silent screaming because up until that point I hadn't told anybody about this screaming in my head. I was screaming for help from somewhere, and it just, like, I didn't know where it was going to come from. I hadn't given up hope completely that it would come, but I just didn't know where it would come from. So interestingly, my friend's name is Alison, was Alison, still is because she's in Scotland, but my youngest is called Alison. So I think that's probably because Alison saved my life. So my baby's called Alison. So that's the story. She made me promise to go to see her practitioner. So she gave me the phone number, and I called the next day, and I actually was squeezed in the next day to see her, and my life, I'll say it changed. It changed that first month, and my husband is the kind of testimony to that, because he said to me, I like this new Lindsay, could the old one just stay away now? You know, can she just not come back? And that kind of made a really big impression on me. But what also made an impression on me was I was not exploding every 5 minutes with the kids. My patience was increased. My impatience obviously was decreased. And there wasn't the huge shifts that I have had since with emotions like my self-worth. But the initial, you know, the depths of despair, that lifted very quickly with the first mix. So that's the way the remedies work. If they're in a really intense place, they tend to work quickly. But the longer term things that you maybe want to work on, they take a long time, because we kind of build layers as we go through our lives, stuffing emotions down. And God, I stuffed down decades of emotions. So I'm actually still working on my kind of very centre of my onion. We call it peeling the onion layers. So I know that this talk is called Remember to Breathe. Okay. And the Bach flower remedies, there's 38 different ones. You might know them as Bach flower remedies, because it's spelt like Johann Sebastian Bach, but he was Dr. Bach, and Dr. Bach was a medical doctor in the 1920s. So he believed that nature held the answer to wellness, and he was a very learned man. He wasn't just some quack who went into the fields and, you know, said this tree's going to work. He was a bacteriologist, very respected. He developed several vaccines for gut flora, because his initial thoughts were that the gut being upset was what made us sick. So he felt that stress caused this gut upset, and he was dealing with giving these people vaccines to reverse that so that they would be well again. And then he went one step further and thought, okay, now what causes that upset? What causes the stress? And he felt that it was an emotional root, so that if our emotions were out of balance, we would be stressed, and we would eventually, in some way, shape or form, become sick. So either physically or mentally, or in my case, both. So that's just a little bit about Dr. Bach's history. He was English, and you might have seen, this is very rarely available, and you might even have seen it on a movie, like on the screen of a movie, or a TV show, because it's very well used by famous people even. I think some of the royals use it. So Rescue Remedy was the only kind of composite of remedies that Dr. Bach put together for emergency or stressful situations. So I had an experience of using this many years before I came to the 38 remedies. I didn't know they were related. I didn't know there was anything but this. So my friend at work, when I think it was after my youngest was born, said to me, because I was complaining about being impatient all the time, and she said, get yourself some rescue remedy. So I did, and it was in the cupboard in the kitchen. And I didn't know whether I stopped, like I didn't know if it worked, because I would go and I would take it and I was calmer. But I wondered if it was just because I'd stopped yelling long enough to go to the cupboard to get it, to take it, and then after that I was calmer. So I was never convinced about it, again because I wasn't ready to be. So you might have seen it. It is wonderful stuff. There's 5 different remedies in here. And if I have time at the end, because I'm not sure how my timing will go, I'll tell you the 5 remedies. But it will work for anybody who is feeling ready to explode. I will say that to you. And the remedy cherry plum is, for me, the end of any emotion that is out of balance. So whether that's fear, anger, any of those things, and this one will help. And it was once upon a time marketed as yoga in a bottle. Okay, calming exercise you can do anytime, anywhere, natural relief for everyday stress. Okay, so it was once upon a time marketed as that. So, how can the Bach flower remedies help you in your family life? I have a list. Okay, so maybe your family life feels like this. Okay, I try to take one day at a time, but lately several days have attacked me at once. This is just a handout I give when I'm teaching. But most people go, oh yeah, I recognise that. And I certainly recognise it, because sometimes that's how it feels. And that's when the Bach flower remedies come into their own. You know, not everybody is like me and goes on a Bach flower journey. You know, so in 2002, which is when I discovered the Bach flower remedies, I began my Bach journey. I had such an experience with them, a positive experience, that I knew that I wanted to share with the world the Bach flower remedies. So I saw a practitioner for 9 months, and then I did the trainer, and I became a practitioner myself in 2005, and a level 1 trainer in 2009. So I have been using the Bach flower remedies myself for 18 years, and the children have been using them for as long as me. So as I say, they are now in their 20s, 28, 26 and 22 just. And they don't always use them, but they know that if they're having an issue, they can talk to me about it, and they can choose remedies for themselves. Because that's the thing about the remedies, I don't choose them for people who ask me about them, they choose them for themselves. So I can guide them, I can say, how are you feeling? That's all I need to know. I don't need to know why you're feeling that way, I only need to know how you're feeling. So that then I can suggest some remedies to you so that you can choose them. And what happens in a practice situation is that I have this little brain bottle here, and you can choose up to 7 different remedies to put in here to use. And it's very simple. It's a dropper bottle. So you use 4 drops 4 times a day into any drink or on your tongue. So I'm just giving you these little things. I'm not looking for you to come to me for a consultation, because you can buy these bottles yourself. You can buy the individual remedies yourself. I can never get them facing the camera. Well, I don't. So 2 drops of this one put into this one and then filled with water is what you would then take 4 drops 4 times a day of. So for instance, you're feeling very impatient, you would take impatience for impatience and put 2 drops of it in here, and then you would use 4 drops 4 times a day to make you more patient. So that probably rings a bell if you're a parent, because I think we all tend to get a bit impatient with our kids. I joke about the fact that mine were 10 before they could tie their shoelaces because I was too impatient to teach them. So, and that's not far from the truth, actually. So, again, stress, okay? Parenthood is hard. It is. I mean, I didn't plan to be a parent, so I can kind of unplanned parenthood. So, but even if you've planned, even if you desperately want to be a mum, if you desperately want to be a parent, then you are still going to experience some of this stuff on this stress wheel. Again, it's got the holes in because it's another handout. But at any point on this stress wheel, you can step off with using the Bach flower remedies. You can step off after mindfulness practice as well. And I know that I'm talking about mindfulness and breathing as well, and I'm going to do a little exercise with you. I have my phone timer set so that I don't run out of time to do that. But the Bach flower remedies are so simple, and they're so helpful for parents and the children and extended family. They just are great in daily life. So that's why I kind of started with the Bach flower remedies. So overtired, irritable, less efficient, you become discouraged, you're sorry for yourself, you give up, you feel guilty, you do excess work because you feel guilty and then you're overtired again, and you just go round and round in this loop. So the Bach flower remedies can help you step off of that stress wheel, that hamster wheel that feels like it's never going to end. If you're anything like me before the Bach flower remedies, and even when they came into my life, like everything wasn't fixed instantly. I'm not saying they are an instant fix. I'm saying that they are a tool that you can use to help you navigate parenthood. So I did have a list and I've lost it now. Here we go. So I just thought I would write down some kind of usual suspects, so things that might go on that you might find the remedies useful for. Control issues. Okay, so maybe you are trying to control your children, or the other way around, maybe they're trying to control you. There's remedies to help you with that. Anger. Okay, your own or your child's. There's a remedy that can help you with that also. If you're anything like me, I have a big red button, and sometimes it's a tiny little thing that will press that huge red button, or big red button, and it feels like I go from love to hate in an instant. It's like somebody just flicked a switch, and that still happens to me, and I'm not enlightened enough yet for it not to be happening. I don't recognise it. I'm in it before I recognise it. But luckily now, when I go into it, I don't stay in it. I know exactly the remedy to take, so I go and I take it, and within probably 4 drops, I take 2, stay away from everybody, take another 2, and then I can go back, and I look for the hatred, the anger and the hatred, and it's not there, it's just gone. So it is kind of like, it's a bit saying like it's a wee miracle, but it is, for me it is, because I used to get stuck in that anger, in that hatred, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And it could last for days. In fact, it could last for weeks. So maybe that's just because I'm Scottish, or maybe just my background, but I have spoken to lots of friends who suffer in the same way, but they think that it's only them. So it's not. If you're someone who has, really intense negative emotions, even at your children, there's lots of us do. And these things help you to balance out the emotion. They don't put anything in that's not already there. What the remedy for fear does is that it floods that fear with its opposite vibration and brings you to balance. So it gives you enough courage to deal with whatever it is that you need to deal with. And on that note, I forgot to tell you even what the remedies are. They're just the energy of plants and trees. Okay, there's no plants or tree bits in them except the energy. So that's the bit I could never get over with my friend. When she would tell me that, I would say, well, that can't work. So that's why it took me so long to even try them. So they are just the energy of plants and trees. And the energy goes in at a vibrational level, and it brings you to balance in whatever negative emotion is out of balance. So patience. I spoke about that. Patience can be helped with rescue remedy, but there is a single remedy called impatience, which will help you with patience. Tolerance, especially mums that might be watching, especially mums who get premenstrual. Our tolerance just goes down the toilet when we're premenstrual, or mine used to. And everything that people did bugged me. The kids bugged me, my husband bugged me. And things that they did all the time that didn't normally bug me, for those few days, it was like chalk on a blackboard. So there is a remedy called Beach, for when you've been a bitch, which deals with that, and it just brings you to balance so that people don't bug you. My children had to look at me when they would take the first crunch of their cornflakes to see if I was flinching. And that was an indication to them that I needed a remedy. So that's my first alarm set, saying that I've done 20 minutes. So I want to keep on schedule here for the mindfulness exercise. So loss of control, that feeling where you're just going to do something or say something that you really know is wrong and you don't want to, but you feel it's going to happen. Cherry plum is in this rescue remedy, and it's also a single which you could use in a mix that you can make for yourself. And guilt, I spoke about being the worst mother on the planet. There's a remedy for that. Overwhelm, especially if you're a young new parent or an older new parent, or you've just had your third child, and you've got 2 toddlers already. So overwhelm is often an emotion that people come to me needing a remedy for. So there is a remedy for that that helps you not to feel overwhelmed. Over concern, that might not seem like an issue, but it does cause stress. So if you are a parent who is always worrying about your children or your loved ones, your parents perhaps, or your spouse, then there's a remedy that can help you to be less concerned, so that you don't spend every waking moment worrying about them, and when they are late to get home, you've got the worst case scenario imagined in your head. So there's a remedy for that also. I'm speaking really fast, and I'm just hoping you understand me, because you can't put your hand up and tell me that you can't. So I apologise if my Scottish passion for this makes me speak so fast. White chestnut is a remedy that is in this crash. This blue-lidded bottle. Okay, so it's Rescue Night, and sometimes it's called Rescue Sleep. And it has the 5 same remedies as Rescue Remedy does, but it has an added one called Rescue Night, which is for people who have those thoughts going round and round and round in their head and you can't switch off. So they're often spending the night tossing and turning or looking at the ceiling, wishing they could switch off these unwanted thoughts. So this is a really helpful remedy. It will only help if it's like repetitive unwanted worries that are going round, repetitive unwanted thoughts. You're on the hamster wheel, and it's the same thing as going round and round, and you're going over and over the same things. That's the only reason it'll help you sleep. There's no sedation in it. It's just to switch off those thoughts. And the great thing is that you can use it just as regular rescue remedy during the day as well, because it doesn't matter that there's white chestnut in it. You can still use it as rescue remedy. So it's a great thing to have in your house in case you have one of those nights when you just can't switch off those worries. When you're feeling sorry for yourself and resentful, I remember counting the hours of sleep that I had, writing them down, and then counting the hours that my husband had, how many times he had got up during the night, because I imagined that I had so much less than him, and there was something like half an hour in it, like 30 minutes difference. But sometimes when we're tired, and that's there is a remedy for tiredness, when we're tired, we build up these things that aren't real, and that's when we go into mindfulness. Mindfulness is about paying attention in the moment, rather than making up a story about something that's absolutely untrue. So tiredness, there's one, and there's also a remedy for change. So every stage of a child's development is change. Like from the minute they're born to the minute, the minute we're born to the minute we die, the one constant is change. So there is a remedy to help people adapt to change. So kids have to go to new schools, they have to go to kindergarten, they have to friends, homes, even a vacation can be stressful for them because it's change. So there is a remedy for that. And I'll just touch briefly on the fact that we are living through this COVID virus, and the amount of people I have heard of feeling extremely anxious about kids going back to school, the decision making about what to do. So there are remedies for decision making, there are remedies for anxiety and fear, and again for the over concern. So they can at this point in time be hugely beneficial to parents and children alike, because if the children themselves are getting caught up in anxiety, or they're angry that they can't go back to school, or whatever emotion that comes up. Again, emotions are emotions. Anger is anger. It doesn't matter why you're angry. Fear is fear. It doesn't matter why you're fearful. It's the same emotion. So the remedies are for the emotion. And sometimes people say to me, does it help physical things? And the answer is yes, but you don't use them for the physical. You use them to balance your emotions. And sometimes if the physical ailment is due to an imbalance in your emotions, then the physical symptom may clear up. So for instance, asthma is usually exacerbated by anxiety. So if I give a child or an adult the remedies for fear, because that's what brings on their asthma attacks, then if they're not fearful, they're not going to have those asthma attacks. So in that sense, the asthma improves. But we're not treating the asthma, we're treating the fear. Okay. So I think that's probably, I don't know if anybody has teenagers. There was another sheet lying around here for teenagers. And this is for both mindfulness and the Bach flower remedies for teenagers and for children and for adults. Things that they both help with. Increase confidence, decrease outbursts at siblings and parents, that's the teens. But for parents, it decreases your outbursts at your children, because sometimes I was like a tantrum. I was the adult having the tantrum at my children. It was ridiculous, but I had them. Increases your sleep quality, decreases anxiety, increases rational thought, decreases irrational thought, decreases negative self-talk, increases your ability to cope with life. And for children, like the teenagers, studying, exams, young adults who are going off to college, also the remedies can be really useful for them. They're on their own, they may be overwhelmed, they may be homesick. There's remedies for all of those things. I think I told you there was 38 in total, for 38 different emotions. And you can mix 7 different ones into this brown bottle. So 7 can go in there. And there's something like 273 million combinations of those 38 remedies. So there's something for everybody. It's a unique thing, it's not one hat fits all, but the emotions for all of us are the same. My fear is the same as yours, my indecision is the same as yours, my anger is the same as yours. It's the same emotion, so it's the same remedy. Increase relaxation and allowing downtime without guilt. That's really important for parents, that you allow yourself to have that downtime without guilt, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't drink from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty kettle. So it's looking at using Bach flower remedies in conjunction perhaps with a 10-minute mindfulness practice daily. So I'm going to go on to mindfulness in just a sec. The last thing I have on here is increased ability to try again rather than give up, and increased ability to stop that downward emotional spiral. And I know that I used to suffer from them quite badly, that I would get into the, what's going to happen next? And you were almost wishing it upon yourself. Whereas now, when I find myself there's 2 or 3 things going wrong, I go in and take the remedy for stopping me thinking what's going to happen next. So there's a few things that I've spoken about, and if you've just joined, or you kind of floated in or floated out, grab a cuppa and listen, because you might hear yourself, you might hear an emotion that you struggle with. And as I said, from the get-go, it's not about me getting more clients, which I would love, not about me getting more students, which I would love, but it's about telling you that these things exist. I think if social media had existed when Dr. Bach was alive, and he died in 1936, but he already had got his remedies out to many countries in the world. They're available in about 90 countries in the world now, so very worldwide, these remedies. And 18 years ago I said to my practitioner, how does the whole world not know about these things already? And she said, well, I don't know, but I know. It's because people like me who know about them don't get out in front of everybody else and risk ridicule about them, and tell you how simple they are. So that's my Bach flower remedies, and I'll just put this because I drew it. Bach flower remedies. B-A-C-H rhymes with match, but it's Dr. Bach, not Bach. Okay, so mindfulness, breathing. And the Bach flower remedies help you breathe because they bring your emotions to balance. That's where they fit into this, is that if you are stressed, your breathing is, you're not paying attention to your breathing. Okay, so mindfulness for me is all about your breathing. Mindfulness. And I like to draw and I like to write, so here we go. And it's only got one L, mindfulness, and I don't have enough room on the one line to write it. But I put an extra L because when you're not being mindful, your mind can feel full. So your mind is full. So you want to be mindful, not mindful. And that's why we do mindfulness practice. And mindfulness practice brings you into the present moment. It's all about working your muscle, your mind muscle. So we go to the gym to work our physical muscles, and it's not an instant fix. Again, we go and we work out and we build muscle. If we stop going to the gym, that muscle will not be maintained. So it's a maintenance. It's always a practice when we go to the gym. So mindfulness practice is the same. So we have to do it regularly, we have to do it daily, but it doesn't have to be for very long. And if you're someone who is not mindful, someone who is always living in the future, okay, you can tend to suffer from anxiety. So if you suffer badly from anxiety, it's probably because you're fearful about the future. Okay, you're worrying about stuff in the future that hasn't happened. So you've made up stories in your head about what might happen, and you're feeling anxious. Okay? If you suffer from depression, or you're down a lot of the time, you're despondent. I know that there's rules about using this word depression, but for me it's just a word that describes, someone who's not feeling good. They're feeling a bit like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Oh, I forgot to draw a heart on my little angel. Never mind. So people suffering from depression tend to be spending a lot of time in the past. They're going over and over things that might have happened, things that they wished would still be happening, or things they wish hadn't happened. So that's just the two things. If you're in the future, you may well be suffering from anxiety, and if you're in the past, you may well be suffering with depression. So mindfulness is about bringing you into this one present moment, and it's not rocket science at all. Basically, it's about paying attention to what is going on right now. And even if that is the fact that you feel your head is about to explode, rather than letting it explode, noticing that it's about to explode and then going and taking some rescue remedies so that it doesn't explode, that's mindfulness. You have noticed that that's the state of mind that you're in, and you have gone and done something about it. If you didn't have remedies, then my advice to people who are learning mindfulness is that they bring their attention to something that takes their attention away from whatever thoughts are causing them the distress. Okay, so there's a few things that you can use, but the easiest thing, and it's always with you, is your breath. Okay, so you use your breath to bring your attention away from whatever's troubling you. You're not resisting it, you're not fighting it, you're not avoiding it, you're just choosing to change your focus to something that is preferential. Okay, so it's much nicer to be thinking a happy thought than to be thinking a destructive thought. And I know that sounds like too simple to be able to do, if you're somebody who struggles with the stories in your head, but it's practice. Okay, mindfulness is a practice that you do for yourself, for your own health, every day. And I've been practicing mindfulness for many years now, but I didn't have it. The Bach Remedies came into my life first, and that was in 2002. And then Reiki came into my life, so Reiki energy came into my life. I did training starting in 2006, and then I became a Reiki. Excuse me, have a drink. Oh, too much talking. Oh. Yeah, Reiki came into my life 2006, and I became a Reiki master in 2009. Completed my training in 2009, and so I was teaching other people Reiki. So during Reiki classes, I would lead meditations. I was teaching adult education. I was teaching the Bach Remedies through adult education, and the coordinator said to me, "What else can you teach?" And I said, "Oh, I can teach meditation." And she said, "Okay, then we'll have you doing that." So I remember planning the first course and thinking I could do guided meditations every week, for an hour. And then I thought, but that's not the most effective thing to teach people. Mindfulness is the most effective thing to teach people, because, if I give you a nice meditation that lasts for, 20 minutes and we talk about it, and another 20 minutes and we talk about it, that's lovely. You've had a peaceful hour. But, the minute you go out of here and someone cuts you